Hi lovely, and welcome to this week's live. Now I'm super excited to share with you the causes and treatments for cramps, because I think pretty much every one of you that answered the questions coming into the group said that you're struggling with cramps. It's one of the most common symptoms that I see women struggling with. And the biggest frustration is that you'll go to the doctors and they'll tell you that it's just a part of being a woman, right? But in no other situation do we ignore pain in our bodies, apart from when it's related to womanly issues or problems around our periods. So if you've got, a pain in your toe or a pain in your back or something, you know that there's something wrong going on. So you do what you can to support your body in healing that problem, that pain, whatever it is. Whereas when it comes to cramps, we're just told to whack a hot water bottle on and leave it at that, really. Take a few painkillers and, if it's really bad, go on the pill and just get rid of your menstrual cycle altogether and just have one that kind of somewhat replicates it. But all of these things are not really tackling the root cause of cramps. And there's a lot of scientists now agreeing and more research coming out that, especially for teenagers, but for women in general, that our period and the symptoms around it should be seen as our fifth vital sign. So as important as things like our heart rate and our breath rate, the way that our periods go down is a really big indicator of what's going on in the body at a deeper level. So let me get into that a little bit now so you understand what I'm talking about. So first of all, the reason cramps happen in the first place is because when we're ready to let go of our uterine lining, the endometrium, these little hormonal messengers called prostaglandins come all the way down to our womb and start really getting those blood vessels to squeeze. So we're really flushing out the womb. So their job is to create a little bit of inflammation, but not so much that it's causing severe pain. So that's like a normal thing that happens in our body. When we get a cut on our hand, the prostaglandins get sent there, cause a little bit of inflammation, a bit of swelling to protect the wound, and then our body does the work to get it to heal. So it's all part of our immune system in a sense. But just understanding that inflammation is meant to happen, it's a normal process. But when we have chronic inflammation in the body, and I'll explain why that happens as well, those prostaglandins go wild, basically. There's just way too much of them being sent. They get confused really about the strength of the message they're meant to be sending. So sometimes the message is so strong that it actually relates to our bowel as well, and we experience period diarrhea or period poops. So you can see how when this is getting a bit out of control, it's not really ideal. So chronic inflammation happens because of things like having an overactive nervous system. So if we're constantly in fight and flight mode, we've got our sympathetic nervous system activated. Sorry, this is just falling off. That's really going to send pain signals around the body because the body's trying to prepare us for attacking a tiger. So it's really trying to pump up the body, get everything going and working, and then just to calm things back down again can be quite difficult. So if that's happening chronically, you're experiencing a lot of anxiety or like cold hands and feet, things like that, we know that that's a huge indicator that the nervous system is just not in a good state. Another thing that can cause this inflammation in the body is having a diet that's inflammatory. So that can include things like having way too much meat and dairy. Not necessarily the case that you have to cut that out completely. Some people do, some people don't. It just depends really where you're at genetically and how much and what quality you're having and things like that. So yeah, meat and dairy, alcohol, things like that. And then not having enough anti-inflammatory foods. So things like, you've probably heard of ginger, turmeric, but even just your veggies, anything that's got antioxidants in it are going to help with anti-inflammatory. So basically fruits and veggies, as long as you're eating heaps of those, you should be getting things down a little bit better. So that's sort of the inflammation side of things. And then we've got the hormonal side of things as well. So you might have heard a little bit about having estrogen dominance in the body, because estrogen and progesterone almost work like a bit of a pair. So either the problem is that you're getting way too much estrogen in your body through your diet, again, things like dairy, or that you're not getting enough progesterone. And that does come from the diet, but it also comes from things like hanging out with your girlfriends. That's a great one. Or seed cycling as well is really helpful for getting those progesterone levels up a little bit. So having things like sunflower seeds and sesame seeds. So yeah, we've got those two sides of it, inflammation and then the estrogen dominance. But the estrogen dominance is also worsened by the parasympathetic nervous system being underactive, or the sympathetic nervous system being overactive. Because what that basically does is releases cortisol into the body, which is our stress hormone, and that effectively blocks progesterone. It kind of latches onto the progesterone receptors and stops them getting into where they need to be, which helps us to calm down the inflammation and everything that's going on. So it's all interrelated. So yeah, just to be aware, it's basically inflammation, estrogen dominance, and having an overactive nervous system. So they're the three main causes. Feel free to drop me any questions if you'd like me to explain that in a slightly different way, as I know it's all quite complicated. Or if you've got a better way of explaining it, drop it in the comments so that people can understand in a different way. So that's our main causes. Now, understanding the quick fixes for this, because that's always helpful, especially at the beginning of our healing journey when we've not been able to root out the deep causes. So quick fixes with the things, yoga poses like balasana, so child's pose, where you're kind of curled up in a little ball, and it can be really helpful to get your fists and place them on your ovaries or where the cramps are in your lower abdomen, and then fold forward into child's pose, because it really creates a lot of pressure there, which just helps to kind of massage and get things moving so the prostaglandins don't need to send so many soldiers down to your womb, because you're kind of helping the process a little bit and doing that squeezing of the womb anyway. Another really helpful one, and this honestly is 50-50. Some people love it, some people hate it. I used to hate it, now I love it. But it's oestrogen, camel pose. So you can just Google that. But basically you're on your knees and you're doing a back bend with your hands supporting your lower back as well. That's really important, and only going back as far as feels comfortable. And I tend to advise people to keep the chin tucked into the chest instead of allowing it to fall back, just because often when we first start our yoga practice, the muscles in the neck aren't really strong enough to support the gravitational pull that happens when you do a huge back bend. So yeah, just experimenting with that, seeing how it feels, and then just any hip movements. So if you're into belly dancing or just general hip rotations, doing a bit of twerking can be great as well. So anything that's just getting the blood flowing basically and assisting the prostaglandins in doing their work. Now, the other couple of things you can do really on the spot, so when you've just come on your period or it's a couple of days before, is getting some anti-inflammatory down you. So things like ginger and turmeric tea. Just make sure to drop a little bit of black pepper in there to activate the curcumin in the turmeric, because it's just really going to potentiate the anti-inflammatory properties. Any antioxidants, as I said, so I like to work with amla, which is Indian gooseberry, and it's one of the most powerful antioxidants in the world. Super cheap if you just go to like any Indian grocery store, and they'll have all the spices there, and typically they'll have it even in the health section. Sometimes they'll have it depending how cool your Indian store is, but yeah, so they're just a couple of things we can do. And then as well, supplements like magnesium, so you can take that leading up to your period, but also take like a stronger dose if you're actually experiencing pain, but obviously follow the guidelines on your little packet of magnesium, and talk to your doctor as well before you're taking any supplements. Just make sure that they're all good with that in case you're on any medications or anything. But yeah, now getting to like really treating the cause. So those things I just mentioned will be great for someone who just experiences like mild cramps every third or fourth period. So just like little quick fixes. But to be honest, those things like only scratch the surface if you're experiencing like really bad cramps every single period. So if you've got like chronic inflammation in the body and really strong estrogen dominance, there's really a lot more that we can do to go a lot deeper, to really stop those cramps even coming in the first place. And just to go back a little bit to the causes, I forgot to explain that the reason that estrogen dominance is a problem is because estrogen basically helps us to build up our uterine lining. So it's really helpful. We really need it to help us ovulate. It's a great hormone. But once we get past ovulation, we really need to start detoxing that estrogen out of the body, because otherwise it just keeps sending that message to grow the uterine lining. So instead of having one that's like normal thickness, it's super, super thick, your endometrium, your uterine lining. And then instead of needing prostaglandins for this much to be removed, you need prostaglandins for this much to be removed. So you've got like a massive, massive inflammatory hormone coming, the prostaglandins coming, to try and get rid of this massive buildup of uterine lining, basically. So that's why estrogen is something that we need, but need to get in check a little bit as well. So treating the cause, really getting into it. So you're going to have to be on like a full anti-inflammatory diet. So as I said, for some people that's completely cutting out dairy, cutting out meat as well for some people, and any processed foods, any GMOs. And the reason for processed foods and GMOs is because our bodies don't really recognize them. They're a really new chemical, or compound of chemicals that our bodies have taken tens of thousands of years to evolve to where they're at now. And this new food is like only just appeared in the last, I think it's since like the 50s, but anyway, not a long time. So our body doesn't recognize it. Our immune system doesn't recognize it. So we get these GMO foods or these like weird chemicals that are in processed foods in our body. And then the immune system's like, whoa, foreign invader, no idea what this is. I haven't seen this for tens and thousands of years. Let's get it out. So you basically get this inflammatory response in your body to try and get rid of this like foreign thing that's inside of you, which then leads to chronic inflammation in the body. So that's one of the things we'd have to do on the anti-inflammatory side. And then when it comes to lowering estrogen in the body, things like cow's milk naturally have quite a lot of estrogen in them, but it's not the type of estrogen that we want. There are phytoestrogens, which we do want, but that's a whole nother topic to get into. So limiting cow's milk as much as you can. Things like goat's milk are not as bad naturally, but if you can, obviously minimizing dairy as a whole as much as possible, especially dairy that has added hormones, because again, that's just going to be pumping the body full of more estrogen, which is going to create more growth of the lining, which is going to require more to flush out, which is going to increase your cramps, basically. So reducing estrogen in the diet as well, and so that's kind of the dietary side, but then we really want to be activating the parasympathetic nervous system as much as we can. Because there's evidence and research to suggest that it almost doesn't matter what you eat, almost, as long as your body is in rest and digest mode. So rest and digest relates to the parasympathetic nervous system, and then fight and flight mode is the sympathetic nervous system. Now, the body cannot really do anything to heal itself when it's in fight and flight mode, because all of the blood and nutrients and energy is sent to your brain and to your muscles so that you can fight that tiger. Whereas when you're in rest and digest mode, the body's focusing on all of the other processes, so everything else basically, including the digestive system and the reproductive system. And it's the mode in which our body heals. So our body can't heal when it's in fight and flight mode. So if you can get your parasympathetic nervous system, or your rest and digest mode, fully activated 100% of the time by having really low stress levels and having a really extensive tantra yoga practice, is what I subscribe to personally. That's what I enjoy. But pretty much every country around the world has their own calming modality, whether it's forest walking or Tai Chi, or there's so much that you can do. So if tantra yoga is not your thing, then that's okay. Just make sure you're going out to find something that does work for you to calm your body down, even if it's just journaling or painting or anything like that. So easier said than done. And the thing is, you're way better off doing 10 minutes of some kind of calming practice every day instead of doing like a 2-hour practice once a week. So that's actually weirdly harder to implement, that daily routine, but we need to be getting our body into that calm state every single day so that we're assisting the anti-inflammatory and the estrogen dominance, getting that reduced as well. So they all need to work together as this triad to reduce the cramps long term. Now, for some people, you might be way into this already, and that's not a difficult thing for you to change. You can just do your own research into this, and you won't need any help from me at all. You can just crack on with it, and that's awesome. However, if you're thinking like, wow, that's going to be a crazy dietary change for me, I have no idea where to start. I would like someone to keep me accountable as well while I'm going through this, because we all know we can kind of start a diet on Monday, but then Tuesday, Wednesday come around, especially the weekend comes around, and we're not so great at staying on track. So what I do, and what you should do yourself if you're doing this without me, is to meet yourself where you're at and focus on bringing in the anti-inflammatory foods, and focus on bringing in the good foods, and then naturally you'll have less space in your tummy for the bad foods. And I'm careful of saying good and bad foods because it's really not as simple as that. But yeah, just focus on bringing in the good, and that just makes the case that there's just not so much room for the bad stuff. So instead of focusing on the negative, basically, and like, oh, I can't have this, not allowed this, not allowed that, focus on the new foods that you can try and get excited about. So that's something that I really emphasize with my clients, and that's why it's a 3-month coaching journey or a 6-month coaching journey instead of just a one-off nutrition strategy session, which I do as well for people that don't want to engage in the full coaching thing and they just want like a little nudge in the right direction. That can definitely be helpful for some people, but for others it's not so easy just to suddenly switch your whole way of eating, and this really does have to be a lifestyle change. It's not something that it's not a diet that you go on for a little bit, you get rid of your cramps, and then you can go back to eating how you were before. This is something that you really do have to commit to for life, which is why we take our time to implement the changes slowly. And then they become more long-term and more sustainable, and it's almost a complete lifestyle shift instead of just like trying to quickly do it, which never really works out long-term. So if you would like to hear more about working with me, I do offer a complimentary and obligation-free discovery session where we'll basically sit down and just see where you're at with your health and see if you'd be a good fit for my program, or if I might just be able to point you in the direction to someone else if I don't think you need the full coaching journey. So yeah, that's what I offer. But as I said, you can definitely do this by yourself as well if you're not experiencing those severe symptoms and you feel like you just need to do a little nudge with your diet as well. So yeah, I think that's everything. And if you have any questions at all about how to help heal with this, then feel free to reach out to me. If you would like a full free video, a yoga video that is helping with cramps, then just drop me a message with your email address and I'll sign you up to my mailing list, the Menstrual Mail, and I'll be able to send that out to you. And as I said, that's completely free and just something to help on the quick fix side of things. So it takes you through child's pose and oestrogen and a few different poses as well to help calm down the body. Okay, I will see you possibly at a different time next week. As I explained in the group, everything's a little bit crazy with my life at the moment, moving to the UK, and forgot my sister's wedding coming up as well. So excuse me if the timings are a little bit off, but effectively in this next series of videos, I'm going to continue just picking a symptom. So probably the next one I'll do is headaches and migraines, and talking you through again the causes of that and treatments that we can do as well, both quick fixes and long-term rooting out the cause. Alrighty, my loves, I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching.